I didn't really know if I'd do a video review on this one, since I was almost positive Riverdale would infuriate me, but I'd say I found enough grist for the mill, as they say. And so, you'll find out what I thought when Johnnie Torch reviews the Riverdale pilot. Just to set the table for the uninitiated, Riverdale is the saga of the Archie gang by way of the Lifetime channel, with a hint of Twin Peaks thrown in for good measure. As an old-school fan of Archie, I pretty much figured I'd hate the show for its modern update of the famous characters and a fairly glum and angsty take on the traditionally upbeat and humorous comics. And I wasn't really wrong about that, but I admit there was enough nods to the comics and a few good performances that made me stay engaged with the episode at any rate. Alright, I'm willing to accept this is not Archie done as I would have liked to have seen it. But let's start with the good. I generally liked the actresses who played Betty and Veronica, and I felt they had a decent handle on their friendship. It's always been a bizarre triangle, both of them are in love with Archie, yet they still remain the best of friends, despite a somewhat subliminal amount of competition between themselves. That was more or less the only highlight for me. I also liked Cole Sprout's enigmatic Jughead Jones, who receives little more than a cameo. He takes the role of the chronicler of these events, who is probably somewhat wiser than the mortal players who are taking center stage. And he also has his traditional crown hat transformed into a beanie. There was a few cool nods to the comics, such as Veronica's butler Smithers and Pop Tate having small roles, as well as Veronica calling Archie by her trademark Archiekins. The rest of the show, however, ranges from dull to outright bad. Archie himself is a fairly dull character. I'm not really putting that on the actor, but the characterization of Archie here isn't the classic geeky everyman type character that he typically is in the comics. Here he's a brooding Adonis, spending equal time on the football field and Miss Grundy. No, you didn't hear that wrong. Miss Grundy, who sort of resembled Olive Oyl's grandmother in the comics, has been Aunt Maid, so to speak, here. It's the series' first real misstep, and it'll be interesting to see if the series will be able to recover from it. Like much of the show's edgy format, it feels like it's there just for shock value. I mean, Archie already has two cute hotties to choose from in Betty and Veronica. This feels so unnecessary. Cheryl Blossom, on the other hand, isn't quite the hottie her comic counterpart is. She's played here much more as a villainess than her comic incarnation, and of course the ongoing story is who murdered her brother. Other Archie characters in the lore don't get adapted much better here. Reggie, who was always my personal favorite from the comics, as a devilish trickster, is pretty much a race-changed total non-entity here. Josie and the Pussycats make a fairly needless appearance, with the complete band also being race-changed. Kevin Keller is portrayed like a typical gay best friend for Betty, and instead of courting Midge, Moose ends up with Kevin. And add to that the sensationalized scene of Betty and Veronica kissing at cheerleader tryouts, and it just feels like they're trying way too hard to make a fairly squeaky clean series edgy just for the sake of it. And the show fails under these repeated attempts. Alright, I also have to mention Luke Perry appears as Archie's dad, and there's some background stuff going on between the principal character's parents, but much like the comics, they really aren't that interesting. Alright, so the final verdict. It actually held my interest during the show, so I can't say I was tempted to turn it off at any time. But I don't know how long I can really maintain an interest in a show that makes so many demeaning demands from many of my childhood favorite characters. I'm giving Riverdale 2 stars out of 5. This is Johnnie Torch reminding you, keep the flame burning brightly, and I'll be with you again real soon.